Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. All right, we are back for another exciting episode of Off the Comma, and I'm just so very grateful for being able to be part of this work and being able to do these interviews. And for me, I'm getting to sit here and be face to face with someone. You all don't get to see their face yet, but get to be face to face with someone. And this week is also someone that I don't know, that I haven't met before, and I'm looking forward to getting to meet her and getting to know her through her story. And I'm also excited because this week's episode once again brings us someone from another country outside of the United States. So one of my visions for this podcast was always to be able to not only hear stories from everyday people, but from all over the world. And this is very exciting to be able to talk with someone who's in a completely different time zone. And anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Bracha, I'm going to turn it over to you. Bracha, introduce yourself. Tell us first, how would you like to be known and what would you like for folks to know about you?
Okay, great. I love that you asked that question. So you ask, how would you like to be known? I think you said to me, like, which three adjectives would you describe yourself? I love that. I don't even know if I've ever done that before, but what came to mind first is grateful. I am extremely grateful, but I could always be more grateful. This is what it's all about. And I love that you started the podcast saying how grateful you were. I was like, wow, oh my goodness, I'm in the right place, Grateful. And I insightful was another one. I'm very insightful, kind of deep person. And the other one was like upbeat, joyful. That's who I am now. Yeah.
Nice. I love these adjectives. I'm already seeing them manifest in how you're showing up and not just in how you describe yourself. What else would you like for folks to know about you? Any hobbies or anything you wanted to say about what you do for a living? I have to say, I'm trying to get away from the whole what do you do and what do you do for a living, because I'm personally trying to deconstruct that whole being identified with the work that I do. You are more than welcome to share that with us if you want, and just don't feel like you have to.
Yeah. Well, I'm retired now, so I'm not really doing anything for a living, but I am still writing books, and I do this for joy. I do this because it's just my essence, and because I write books only if I feel they need to be in the world. That's really what drives me. So there's 42 children's books, and they're all spiritual children's books. They're all books. Really, what they all have in common, they all teach gratitude. And sometimes in subtle ways, and sometimes that's what the main purpose of the book is. But I would say they all have that. I say they're books that help children to shine in the world. And then I have just one book for an adult. Okay, this is my memoir, the story of how I came to be who I am now. It's called Nourish the Soul filling the emptiness within.
Hmm.
That's it's not it I didn't exactly write it. I compiled it from actual the diaries that I kept, the journals they turned into, and letters that I wrote. And
Hmm.
then I filled in the missing pieces. So it's kind of a documentary and a psychological mystery because I really answered the questions about my life through putting the book together.
Okay. So a writer by trade or trade and or hobby, and obviously a lot of emphasis on children and gratitude, and then with your memoir, kind of reflection. And it seems like kind of this element of being able to express thoughts in the written form as well.
Beautiful, excellent, right. I when I worked, I ran I coordinated a Big Brother Big Sister program for like 20 years, and
Hmm.
before that I was the activity director of a big elderly residence. So yeah, I love things involving helping people find more joy in life. That's really what it's, yeah.
Okay. Well, you've mentioned joy several times now. So, what's the significance of the word joy for you before we get into the questions and your story?
Gratitude is what brings joy in life. That's
Hmm.
it's that simple. And we've made things really complicated, but it's really that simple. That is the secret recipe to living a joyful life.
Okay. Thank you for introducing yourself and already kind of giving us a preview and some insights into what it's like, or who you are as a person and what it's going to be like to get to know you. Bracha, before we get into the questions, and again, I just want to acknowledge, you and I haven't talked beforehand. I don't know any of the details of your story. We do that on purpose, and I'll end up asking the same 5 questions that I do of every guest, and that'll kind of frame our discussion today, our interview. Before we get into the questions, though, I like to do this with every single guest. Thinking about yourself and the story you're about to tell, the next 40 or 45 minutes or so that we'll be together, what intention would you have for yourself in telling your story today?
To be as real as possible, um, to feel calm about it. I never mentioned this before ever, but I feel like being open. I have like a nervous tick in my eye, and especially since I'm recording at night, it gets stronger as the day goes by. Um, so I feel like I've had it since childhood, and it doesn't prevent me from doing presentations because I feel I'm out here with a, people could see everybody's got different flaws or weaknesses, whatever they have. I still feel like my message is really important. So I'm going to do it despite that. And I hope that my words will get through to people's hearts, even if I have this, like nervous tick thing, whatever it is.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and for you. I mean, I won't even take this out in post production, but we're not even going to use any of the video, Bracha. So while we're talking, if you want to immerse yourself completely in your story, you don't have to worry about anything visible and visual. Obviously, what matters to you is how it feels for you. But just know that nobody will be seeing you for this interview, and you can just really focus on your story and whatever else you want to focus on for us. So.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that with us. My intention is to support you in this intention of being able to share your story and to help your story reach other audiences. And that's really what I'm here to do, is to create a space for you to tell your story, and that in the telling of your story, there will be someone out there who resonates with it, that will see a little of themselves in you and your story, and they'll connect, feel a little less alone, and in the best of cases, feel inspired and empowered to do something that perhaps they've been wanting to do.
Wonderful.
Nice. All right, Bracha, first question. Where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Um, what comes to me, I love the idea. I never heard it before. I don't know if it's your expression, sitting on a comma, but I never heard it before. But what came to mind immediately is having a food addiction, because
Mm.
any addiction is being stuck. I saw it as being in a prison. I saw it, it felt like I was in a prison where the walls got narrower and narrower around me. As it took over my life, it takes an addiction takes over one's energy, one's thoughts, one's emotions. It just takes over a person.
Mm.
So that was when I was sitting on a comma, and yeah, in my memoir, that's what I discuss, how it gradually developed through the years and how I was able to heal. I really didn't see the thread going through my whole life until I put the book together, and then I could see what it was
Mm.
all about.
So tell us a little bit more about the experience. You've described this, and it sounds like a very profound and significant one. What were some of the details around this comma? In a minute, I'm going to ask the second question, and it's gonna build on what you're going to share, but kind of just expand a little bit more for us. What was going
Yeah,
on while you were sitting on this comma?
the addiction was this. It was fluctuating between uncontrollable binges and really restricted
Mm.
dieting to make up for the uncontrollable binges. I learned recently that that's like the most common food addiction that there is, like one of the most common eating disorders. Um, so it got worse and worse. And with addictions, also, you're doing them privately.
Mm.
Nobody knows how you're suffering. So you're doing everything in secret. And I looked really successful on the outside, but I was suffering terribly within. Um, as anybody that has an addiction is. Um, I was I was at Harvard, and of course, I became an expert in the field of eating disordered behavior while I was getting sicker and sicker. I'm writing papers on it. I'm talking about it, bringing in speakers, and doing research. And I was getting worse and worse. So, an intellectual understanding is not enough to heal. I knew
Mm.
I had a problem, but that wasn't enough. And then after graduating with honors from Harvard, I went on to medical school. And there, the behaviors got even worse and more bizarre, what I was doing, the things I was doing, um, until I like spilled all the beans. I finally went to a psychiatrist that was devoted to helping medical students. And he happened to be Japanese. I told him what I was doing. I said everything. And in this session, he said to me, I know that you think you're in a really bad place right now, but I have a feeling this summer when you go to Israel for like I had like 2 months off before I started my second year. He said, I think that you're going to find yourself spiritually what you're looking for.
Mm.
And I think that's going to make a real difference in your life. What a strange thing to say. He didn't have my same heritage or culture. Like, why was he saying that? I don't know, but
Well,
that's kind of what
interesting.
what
Interesting. It
happened.
was almost as much of a prediction or prophesizing, right? As it was any type of a diagnosis or um, very interesting.
Yes. And he saw that I must have been focusing in that session of my spiritual searching.
Mm.
He must have, I don't remember really all that I talked about besides saying everything I was doing, but he must have sensed that this this intense spiritual longing that I had, and I didn't even see the connection between my addiction and that spiritual longing like he did.
Mm. Can I ask you to expand, say more about this intense spiritual longing? Because you've talked about the addiction and you're starting to unpack that a little bit more with us. but that's pointing at something, this spiritual longing. What is that?
Yeah. I mean, for years, I started the book and the diary started at age 12. I had just finished reading the diary of Anne Frank when I decided to start my own diary. And I was brought up Jewish, but it didn't come, it was like a cultural identity. I didn't have a deep spiritual understanding of it. So I was drawn to things like um, Christian Science and Buddhism. I got involved with different things, searching for spirituality. That's what was missing in my life. I had a very sweet life, but what was missing? I mean, I feel like I was like a control in the chemistry lab where I had the basic stuff for a good life, and yet there was this strange feeling of emptiness that couldn't be filled. I didn't
Mm,
know where it was coming from. Like no food was enough. I was still left hungry. So what was this hunger? Later, I found out it was a genuine hunger. And when I studied different religions, I found elements of truth that lifted me up and just kept me searching for more and more. So, and that's how I ended up at Harvard too, because I was searching for ultimate wisdom.
mm,
And I started studying really hard about everything, learning about stuff in the world. I have a lot of a childlike curiosity, which hasn't left me. So I love to learn about things. And I wanted to go to like, seem like the ultimate in wisdom, go to Harvard. You know, my parents were like, what are you doing? Like they weren't into this at all. But I was like, yeah, this is where I want to be. So I just was studying everything, trying almost everything, you know, experimenting. That's how I lived my life.
mm.
Yeah.
I have to acknowledge you for, first of all, sharing with us, because talking about our addictions isn't easy for a lot of folks. I find, and I'm going to self-reference a little bit, if I may. I find my observations and my own experiences that once we acknowledge our own addictions, and I'm using that word because you did, once we acknowledge our own addictions, those of us who do acknowledge them and decide to move into a different relationship with them generally will be a lot more open and willing to talk about them, right? But for so many folks who are experiencing them and haven't come to that moment or
Yes.
that point of awakening with it, they're
Yes.
not, and that's not a judgment. That's just kind of like the phases and the evolution, and it is part of
Yes.
the relationship. The self-referencing is, I oh my gosh, like I got goosebumps when you were talking about this. Like there was a real hunger and there was never enough food. I had issues with food as when I was young, but it was more about just always considering myself fat and running to excess, right? But it was alcohol for me. And I look back now using your words, and it's even still true today, this constant searching for something, this constant hunger. So I so appreciate you sharing that, because I wonder how many folks are experiencing what you've described and haven't yet identified the hunger and or the thing that they're using to kind of satisfy that hunger. I hear your same words coming out of the mouths of so many people who have a relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
Exactly the same words. And
Yes.
it's really enlightening, right? Like you're a light bulb right now. Um,
Thank you. It's every addiction. With food, the analogy is so obvious, but it holds true for all addictions. We're trying desperately to fill the emptiness within with
mhm.
externalities. And instead, it gets deeper. The hole gets bigger and deeper the more that we do this because it's not a physical hole.
Yeah.
It's not even it's not even an emotional hole. It goes even deeper. It's a real, genuine hunger from our soul. Our soul is crying out for nourishment.
Mhm.
And and wait till I get to what fills that, what nourishes the hungry soul. What is the only thing that fills us up?
Mm.
You know what that is. You know what
I
that
do.
is.
I'm waiting for you to say.
I know you know. It's
Yeah.
gratitude. Gratitude is what fills the soul. It's amazing. It's so simple, but we've gone way out of that garden. We've forgotten that. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Well, and you say so many things as well. There's the hunger. There's the why does the hunger get worse when I am feeding it with something? But if you're feeding it with the wrong thing, it's kind of like if you're walking in the desert and you're thirsty, and somebody gives you alcohol, that's not going to cure the thirst because it's not the thing you need. It's not the water. If somebody gives you, sand or something poisonous, right? So putting something in it isn't necessarily solving anything. It feels like it is. And
Temporary, that for that temporary moment, it gives us the pleasure that we're craving. What we're all craving is lasting
mm,
pleasure. So if we feel a scarcity of pleasure in our lives, we want to just keep stuffing it in because I get this momentary pleasure if I'm eating or drinking or taking drugs or gambling, whatever the pleasure is, the immediate pleasure. And then I feel worse afterwards. I'm emptier afterwards. But this sense of scarcity in my life is what keeps us stuffing our faces, keeps us stuffing this into ourselves because we don't know how to provide ourselves with lasting
mm,
pleasure. Once we know how to do that, then we got the power back. We regain the power from our addictions.
mm. So powerful. I, we will explore more. I want to ask the second question. I believe you've already answered some of this, but I want to give you an opportunity to expand. The second question is, as you look back on this comma that you were sitting on, what did it create for you?
It it created oh did it I like I did say before, it did create a prison. And here I when I read this someplace, an addiction is like the only kind of prison where the you have the key to get out. Like the locks are on the inside, not on the outside.
Mm,
We have the power to get out of the prison. That's the amazing thing, but we don't know it.
mm.
And with the right tools, we can get out. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in this prison and the keys are in your hand, but you don't know it at the time. What else was that like for you? You said, you were like eagerly, aggressively, anxiously, desperately seeking knowledge and wisdom. You were going to school. It sounds like you were educating yourself extensively. You said there was this constant pursuit and filling the hole. How else did that show up in your day-to-day routines?
Well, when I got to the end and I got to see, like at Harvard, I got to see the illusion right in front of me. It was a huge blessing. I got to see that fame and fortune and power don't bring lasting joy. I got to meet like really famous people, very powerful people, and I saw that they were like anybody else, just looking for more. I remember I went to this really exclusive garden party on this beautiful day in May with like the children of the most famous people at the time, and that we're all talking, and all of a sudden, like the sky fills up with thunderstorm clouds. There was this huge downpour, and the whole party was over. Everything's sopping and soaked, and it was. And I said to myself, "This is it." I got to the peak of the mountain, and there's nothing up here. Even these powerful people, they can't stop the rain from coming down on their own party.
Mm,
There's something more. I know there's something more, but I don't know what it is. So actually getting to the top and getting to what I thought was the top and seeing that there was nothing up there, Actually, I became even more despondent after that. It was like there is really nothing to this. What's the point of living? By the time I was in medical school, it sounds crazy. I'm studying to become a psychiatrist, and I really didn't feel like going on any longer. Like, what is the point of life? What are we living for? What's the purpose of all this? I I I didn't see the point of continuing. It sounds so amazing, but that's what an addiction brings you to. You don't even want to live anymore because you're in such a terrible place.
Mm. That's that is a deep thought, and I'll confess I ask myself this question a lot. And as somebody who's also kind of like a seeker, like this constant seeking and exploring and need for knowledge and answers, and then when you can't find those things, you shove whatever you can in, whether it's food and used to be booze, right? Um,
Yes.
and and I asked myself that question now as someone who's trained in self observation, who has been very fortunate and is grateful for all of this wisdom and knowledge from my peers and fellows like yourself and so many others. I can ask that question and be an observer of that question now, as opposed to feeling desperate and needing to act on
Yes.
it. But what is the point? And there's no call to action on anybody else's part, but that is the most fundamental question that I sit in every single day right now. So I can kind of relate a
Yes.
little bit to what that was like for you, but say more about what that was like for you. I mean, to be sitting with that kind of a question.
I didn't, it was as if the world had colors in it when I was a child, and then it became increasingly gray.
Mm,
I didn't have morals left. It didn't matter what I did. Like if I pick, like I met someone in a bar and they drove me home and they're completely drunk. My life didn't matter to me. Why would I do a thing like that? Because it didn't matter who I was with. All of this, I didn't value my life. I didn't value life in general, and I didn't trust. It's a addictions come with wanting to have control
mm,
when you feel like the life is out of control and you're out of control. It's like a way of trying to bring some control into your life, but it makes things much worse. So that's the state. I'm trying to get into that headspace of what it felt like.
mm,
That's that's what it was because we don't have trust. So we got to have this sense of controlling things. We don't trust that there's an ultimate goodness to life, and we don't trust that we are ultimately good. These are
mm,
things that we don't trust. So life becomes very meaningless and gray. That's how it
mm.
felt.
I'm also, you tell me if I'm wrong here, but you use the word joy so much in the earlier part of our conversation, and it seems like that was missing at that point.
Absolutely. The colors were drained from life,
Mm,
draining. That's what it felt like. Here I was this very joyous child, and then increasingly through the years, from my idealistic self, that was the genuine part of me, um, came all the sarcasm and cynicism
mm,
that I got to see from other people at Harvard and wherever. This is what began to take over. This is how it might not be a vision, but I'm just gonna. This is how we are like this light, this beautiful light, and when addictions happen, like or trauma, it was a trauma, really. I can't say that what goes on is like these layers. We cover up our beautiful light, the cynicism, the sarcasm, not trusting anymore. We cover it up to protect. Really, it's a form of coping. We're protecting that pure part of ourselves that's still shining. Sometimes we need support of someone like you to help a person to take. We can't, some people can't do it alone. They need support to help
mm,
remove the
mm,
layers. And we also need to constantly be nourishing ourselves, nourishing that. soul so that we can melt away these layers. That's also what we do. The more we nourish the soul, the more we can sense it shining and it shines out into the world. We begin to see again because that never goes away. Despite all the years of covering up, no matter how many years a person has spent covering up their the beautiful light that they have,
Mhm.
it's still in there, it keeps shining.
Yeah.
We just have blockages on top of it.
Yeah, and I love that folks couldn't see the visual, but you literally held up a light and then you put a garment over it. But it's like that light. It's kind of like it's like cloudy days, right? When you remember that
Yes,
the sun's still over there on the other side of the clouds, like the sun
yes,
didn't go away.
yes,
Wow, there's this element
yes,
of awareness and patience and perseverance, but back to the things that you've already said: trust and
yes.
belief. Bracha, let's go to the third question. Obviously, your story will flow back and forth, but I'd like to ask, as you look back at this comma that you were sitting on, no, there's so much more you can say. What did you learn about yourself?
Um, I learned that the hunger I had was authentic. It was real, and nobody can deny it. And I really believe that people with addictions are people where their souls are more exposed.
Mm-hmm.
They're more aware of it. They're more aware of this pain that's not being fulfilled, that's not being nourished. They have an inner awareness, and because they feel that hunger constantly, they're trying to fill it. No, obviously we're filling it with the wrong kind of stuff, but it's because we don't even recognize that we're spiritual beings. I remember asking my father that, like, when I was like young, maybe I was probably around 12, and like he wasn't a spiritual kind of person. And like, why are you living? I would ask him. I was going around asking that question for years. Like, why are you? And I remember where I was sitting. I I was watching my father shave in the bathroom as I asked him that question, and he said, "I don't know. It's just like watching TV. I'm living because I want to know what's going to happen tomorrow." And I was like, I don't know. I was just disappointed. That just wasn't enough for me. Okay, I'm glad that was enough for him, but I felt, and my sister would always say that to me. Oh, you always care about what's the meaning of life. Who cares? I don't know. Like certain people, they care more. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like it's on the surface, and we have this awareness. And I really believe that addicts and recovering addicts are people that have more exposed souls. And I forgot what was the
Well,
question. Wait, what
actually,
was the
I'll come
question?
back to that. I'd love to reflect on what you said. And it just rings so true for me. And I see it in so many of the folks that I have talked to and interviewed, whether it's on the podcast or clients. You are just, I'm just going to say, you're just a beautiful reflection right now through your experience and your honesty and your vulnerability and putting such beautiful words to what a lot of people experience and can't explain or describe. And
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
and this acknowledgement of particularly people with addictions, and we don't know for a fact, but I'd be willing to gamble that so many folks who are struggling with some kind of an addiction, exactly as you described, it's like there is this just different level of being. It doesn't make them more of anything. It doesn't make them better than anyone else because of it. It's just the differentness, right? Kind of like some people are really good with numbers and some people are really good with words. Some people are really good with logic and some people are really good with emotions. And the vast spectrum in between and among all of those things, right? But the thing I wanted to say is that it seems to continue to give credibility to, not that it needs to, but for the skeptics, that there are highly sensitive people and it's not some catchphrase that's used by certain
Yes,
generations, that some
yes,
people are just more perceptive to certain
yes,
environmental factors. And when I say environmental, I mean external and
yeah,
internal. than other people,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make them more or less. It doesn't make them better or worse. It doesn't make them good or bad.
Yeah.
And you describe yourself as one of those people.
Yeah.
And oh my God, you and I could talk for weeks, but like while we maybe don't have the exact answer, we at least have a lot of clear signs.
I think we have the answer too. That's what I
Mm,
believe,
mm,
you know? And the
yeah.
answer, seriously, I really believe that the answer is gratitude.
Mm. I love that. And you've said that so many times, and I can hear how firmly you believe that. Okay, so then I'll come back to the original question and let you expand on this, because I think here is something that people can really learn from you, from your experience. The question was, what did you learn about yourself? And you're saying
Yes.
the answer is gratitude. What is gratitude for you? How do you, as someone who's highly sensitive, who has dealt with addiction, who has to find those answers for yourself, what does gratitude look like for you? How does that show up every day?
Yeah. So this is like my purpose for being right now, teaching about gratitude. And again, what did I learn from the addiction? Like many people have told me, why did I put like this really raw and embarrassing stuff in my memoir? Because if you don't experience the pain, if I don't show how painful and how low my life got, then you can't appreciate where I'm at now.
Mm,
That's the contrast is what's important, you know? And now I can devote my life to to spreading gratitude now. It's like I that summer when I went to Israel, I got to learn about ancient wisdom that had been tossed really in my heritage. I didn't know about it. So one one piece of ancient mystical wisdom that I learned is called the pleasure ladder. And there's 5 rungs on the pleasure ladder. Corresponding to our 5 fingers. And it's showing us we got the power right here
mm,
in our hands. It can remind us 5. So these five fingers, they also correspond to the 5 levels of the human soul. This is universal. The lowest level of the soul is the part that's attached to the body. So this level of the soul is nourished by all the natural physical pleasures in this world. Um, Eating healthy food, spending time in nature, music, moving our bodies like dancing, gardening, running, swimming, whatever you enjoy. When we do these things, when we experience these things with gratitude, then it nourishes our body and our soul.
mm,
That's the missing ingredient. Okay, so that's level 1. That's the lowest level of pleasure. Moving up, the next level up is surprising. It's love.
mm,
Now, love, it doesn't sound empowering. It seems to be dependent on somebody else.
mm, mm,
But we can bring love into our lives at any moment by just focusing on the virtues of another.
mm,
So even in prison, even in solitary confinement in a prison or in the prison of an addiction, we can focus on somebody like a grandmother that once did a kindness for us, and we are instantaneously inspired to be a better person. We have this warm emotional feeling of love coming into us. Each level up the pleasure ladder brings more connection and is a more lasting pleasure. And that's what we're after in life,
mm.
lasting pleasure. So, should I continue to
Yeah,
go up?
please. Even if you just list them.
Okay,
So we've got physical, we've got love, which also
right.
I put in parenthesis inspiration.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The natural physical pleasures, love. Next comes meaning, doing something good and meaningful. You'll notice like all these things, when if you tell someone that's depressed or anxious or in an addiction to help them feel better, you'll tell them eat healthy, exercise, spend time with other people, do something meaningful, volunteer. But now you can understand why these things work, because we are spiritual beings and we need this spiritual nourishment. So love, again, is being grateful for another person, for the qualities of another person, the spirit of another person. Then meaning, doing something good and meaningful. I was on another show, and when I got up to this level, the podcast host, he said, the other day he was feeling lonely and miserable, and he bought a whole pizza pie for himself. He finished two slices and he's about to plow through the rest of the box when there's a knock on his door. His neighbor needs his help for 2 minutes. And when he comes back from moving furniture, whatever the neighbor needed, he comes back, he looks at the pizza, he doesn't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like what changed?
Mm-hmm.
What changed in that time period?
Yeah, yeah.
He puts the rest of the pizza in the fridge for another day, no problem. He filled up with gratitude. He connected to another. He was able to help someone else. He filled up, and what he really wanted was lasting pleasure. He didn't want the pizza. He wanted more pleasure
Mm,
in his life, and he got it.
yeah.
So that's it. And then the next to the highest level is creativity. That's surprising again. But if you think about it, when you're in the creative zone, you don't feel like eating, you don't feel like sleeping, and you're even beyond time,
Mm-hmm.
because like time doesn't matter when you're in this creative space. So when you're being creative, you're putting, like, anybody could have moved the furniture, but when you're being creative, you're putting a unique part of yourself into the world, your
Mm.
own special light, the light that you were designed to bring into this world, Yeah.
I went down to the lounge in my apartment building the other day just to sit and read for a little while, and I ended up rearranging the furniture. I lost all track of
Oh,
time. So I get it. Okay, so
wow.
I don't want to sidetrack us. Creativity, and then
Wow.
the last finger is
The the last finger, right? The highest level is called transcendence. It is when we recognize we are all connected. It transcends all the limitations between us. And we recognize that we all have the same energy flowing through all of us. And it's all from the same source energy. It's
mm,
amazing.
mm,
We are all connected. And it's also like you experience that under a starry sky at night, when you know you're a part of like the greater universe. Like, that stays with you forever, that feeling in the country under the stars. It's a transcendent moment, but it's forever. It lasts forever. You can always get back and reach that moment again. I know from my childhood. And it's also when you transcend your own limitations, you make that first crack in a bad habit. You just begin to crack your addiction with one step. It's like you are transcending the limited part of you, the comma, the stuck on the comma, and you are reconnecting to the limitless part of you,
mm,
your
mm,
spiritual self.
mm,
So that's those are all the five levels. They are available to us every moment.
mm, mm,
So whenever we're feeling that scarcity of pleasure in our lives, this I made a chart of it, but actually I filled in all of what I just explained, like the pieces of what it's about, and people could find it on my website.
mhm.
You can download a free chart of the pleasure ladder and put it on your fridge or your cabinet. If you ever feel
Nice.
like overeating, it reminds you there's no scarcity. You don't have to eat the entire container of ice cream, and it's just going to fill you with pleasure for that moment, but afterwards you'll feel emptier than the container. So
Mm,
like,
mm,
you can you can fill up with lasting pleasure because there's only one price to pay to climb any rung on that ladder. What's the price that you have to pay? Gratitude.
Gratitude. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
I
So,
love it. Bracha, you answered that third question with gusto, and you've clearly learned a lot as a result of sitting on that comma. I want to go to the fourth question, which is what has changed for you as a result of sitting on
oh,
this comma?
I never, I'm, I'm never running on empty.
Hmm.
Again, once I got this tool, there will be challenges in my life. There would be one really difficult time that I went through in my life um, after the addictions and when a really scary time. And it was hard and it was painful, but I never, ever got to run on empty again. Now that I now that I have this wisdom for living, which is essential, and that's why I write the children's books, because I want to give it to children as early in life as possible. The tools for happiness, how to live a joyful life, because we got it like you can always play catch up.
Hmm.
We have neuroplasticity. We can always change our brains to become gratitude brains. But imagine doing that from the beginning of life, understanding this from the beginning. That's what I'm giving to children.
Hmm.
So
My
thank you.
God, it I don't want to hijack the episode, but it makes me think of, I'm Generation X, and we think about this. I mean, we're talking about this in our world right now. People are going back and exploring, issues from childhood and things like that, so that they can deconstruct and deprogram and live a happier life, right? We hear a lot about that, and it's amazing, right? Because life is going to bring what life brings. I mean, it's not always going to be easy, and there's going to be challenges. And I'm one of those people like yourself who I'm constantly seeking and searching, but it's easy for me to revert to the old ways and imagine, even as life passes, my old ways were kind of growing up in scarcity and, you have to do it all yourself and you can't depend on people and all that horse shit, right? So when I am in a stressed or panicked place, that's my default, that I have to
Right,
also kind of fight with that and
right.
so forth. But imagine a world where the things that you forgot from your childhood were these nourishing, affirming, gratitude inducing things. That's just a long and rambling way of me saying, God, imagine the power that that could have, not just in, influencing how you show up as a human being, but also when you do succumb to the stressors and the
Yes,
pressures of the world that do bring out the darker sides of us, which is a part of us, right? Imagine when your default is back to something lighter and brighter. So just
yes,
fascinating.
yes,
I love that. I
exactly.
love that.
The earlier you can imprint this on the soul of a child, they have this tool forever.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And it's
And I want, oh, maybe I shouldn't mention, but yeah, one of my books, one of my newest books is called Don't Read This Book. It's about the inner critic. It this book took me 30 years to write because I
mhm.
didn't have all the wisdom to finish the book, although I'd written most of it years ago. Finally, I got that inner critic that you were talking about. All day long, it's trying to make us miserable. And what it really is this, it's really like a barbell.
Mhm.
It's a gift to us. This inner critic, believe it or not, is a challenge, but it's a gift to us because every single time we push it away, this is how we grow our gratitude
Mhm.
muscles, pushing it
Well,
away. That's how it works.
and I want to clarify that
Yes.
it's a gift as long as you do something with it, right? And we
Yeah.
learn in coach training, don't
Yep.
engage with that voice,
Yes.
don't try to rationalize with that voice. The exercises and the pushing that you just described,
Yes.
right?
Right. And like you said, the first step is recognizing the voice, recognizing the inner
Mm-hmm.
critic is trying to make us miserable. There's this well-known psychologist, Tara Brach. She
Mm-hmm.
teaches about rain. Rain. It's called recognize, allow, investigate, and then nourish. So
Mm,
first we got to recognize, oh, it's that voice. Why am I feeling miserable right now? What just happened? Okay. Oh my gosh, that voice is trying to make me miserable. I'm gonna hear it. I hear it. Now I'm gonna investigate what exactly happened that's making me so miserable. Usually what it always does is try to get you to focus on what you're missing, what you're
mm-hmm,
lacking. That's what it universally does to make you
mm,
miserable. Then once you've clarified, you investigate it, it's clarity. Once you have that clarity, then you can start to nourish. You don't have to wallow in that voice, but then you get the power back. It loses its power the minute you call it by its name. Oh my gosh, it's you,
mm-hmm.
the inner critic. It's like the Wicked Witch of the West, it melts away. And then you get the power back, and you're like, okay, now I'm going to be grateful for what I have right this minute, right this moment, all the things I could be grateful for instead of just wanting that or thinking that's going to bring me happiness.
I love it. I'll just leave it at that. I love it. Let's start to bring things to a close. Bracha, I want to ask the fifth question, and this might be a simple answer for you. I don't know. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
That's it. It's practicing gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Any moment that you are grateful, just one moment is a moment that you're not miserable. It's
Mm-hmm.
un it, so just build those moments in your life. Just take this the littlest thing. One of my examples, I don't have an orange. I just got here recently. So I don't have a real orange. I have a fake orange here. But like an orange is one of my favorite examples. Just think if you mindfully imagine experiencing an orange with gratitude. First of all, the fruit, they're all green. They're being protected so that we don't get to them until they're ready for us. They become the most beautiful colors when they're ready. They're vivid and bright and beautiful. So they're a pleasure to our eyes. They smell beautiful, a pleasure. The scent is beautiful. And then they're individually packaged. When we unwrap the wrapping and we take off the peel, we find this sweet juiciness that's been kept in there for months just for you. It's ready for
Mm-hmm.
you. And then at the end are these tiny seeds. They have the ability to become more trees, more orange trees, infinite more oranges. So imagine that means there is infinite amount of wisdom and loving kindness packed into just
Mm-hmm.
one orange. That's just one tiny thing in your world. There is so much to be grateful for.
Mm. There's a metaphor in that, at least for me, and that's even if it feels like you've been green for your whole life, it doesn't mean that you still can't be ripening and that there might still be a time of fruiting and seeding yet ahead for you.
Beautiful.
Mm, mm. Bracha, thank you so much. So much of your story really resonates, and then of course, there's wisdom from your learnings in there as well. And as you look back on this conversation we've had, you just got a chance to tell your story again to the world. What would you acknowledge yourself for in the telling of your story right now today?
Um, I just had this insight which I never had before that I want to share.
Hmm.
I think it's important. I find it important for me to let people know that I went to Harvard because what I'm saying is so simple about gratitude. So I want people to understand this is what I just got out of this conversation. The reason I'm saying it is to show that I really got to the highest levels of knowledge and wisdom, but yet this kernel of truth, it's like distilled all down to gratitude. Um,
Mm.
I want to say, really, don't disregard it because it really changes your life.
What I believe I'm hearing you say to all of us is that there was so many things that you potentially learned at Harvard that you could have shared, and yet the thing that you're sharing isn't necessarily from Harvard, but being there helped you learn and come to this place.
Yes. And it's and and that's like really intellectual. What I want to say is it's simple. It's really it's it's not like I'm saying something simple because I'm simple. It's like I've been there and done that and seen all this,
Mm,
and I'm still picking this is what really lasts and what
mm,
really brings us connection is gratitude.
mm. Well said. Well said. A life well lived and a lot of things seen and learned. So it's coming from a place of wisdom. Yeah. Bracha, I'll put all the information in the show notes, but where can people find you if people want to see what you're up to, potentially connect with you, see what you're doing, reach out? What are your socials? Where can people look you up?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My youngest children created my website, so they're very into it, getting my message out into the world. All my children are. It's really beautiful. So that's what we're doing, and we're just spreading all these universal messages.
Nice. Well,
Oh, so
and
it's called the new name is Growing Impact Publications. Yeah.
great. And I've also put in, you sent it to me in advance, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, and your
Yeah.
Instagram are all there as well. Awesome. And then the last thing that we do before we close is something that I've done for every guest, and I feel like it's very important because not only are we hearing your story today, which is a way of lifting you up and being able to let people connect with you, but also the whole platform is about giving people voices. And so I always ask every guest, if you look at your circle and your sphere of influence, we call this acknowledgments. Who would you like to give a voice to, boost, lift up? And that could be a cause, organization, individuals, other creators. So, looking at your world, who would you like to acknowledge? And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the three things you asked me about this, and I thought about it, was again the Growing Impact Publications, where you can find all my books and you can download the chart of the pleasure ladder for free. Yeah, we're making a difference. So that, and I want to acknowledge my wonderful husband, Rabbi Aryeh Goetz, because he's a person that's really grounded and yet he can also soar, and
Hmm.
that's what I love, and he helps me. He appreciates that I love to soar, so I really we've been married a long time, and I'm really grateful for it. And the last thing is the aish.com. It's aish.com website, where that's where I began to learn about my heritage, and um, everybody could learn more interesting wisdom there. So I love
Nice.
that website. I visit it almost every day.
Nice. Bracha, thank you so much for being a guest with us, for sharing your story, for opening up and being vulnerable. And I so appreciate it. And I will look forward to talking to you more as well. And I hope you have a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. This is such a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's definitely a calling for me. All right. Thanks. What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma, and feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.